So in this video what we're going to do is we're going to use the microbit to tell us the temperature of a room. So you can see in the input here we have a temperature option. Now before we actually start this, I will say that the temperature sensor that's built into the microbit isn't that accurate. It's not far out, but sometimes between microbits it can be out by about 3 or 4 degrees. That's because it's typically the CPU temperature that it's reporting. Now the way I typically teach this is I'll ask the pupils to complete the flow chart, and here's one that I've done earlier. So you can see I've got a start, and I normally give them the start and the take temperature, and then we typically ask them what's needed. So the microbit has the temperature, but it doesn't have any way of displaying it until we tell it to. So after we've displayed the temperature, then we can use a little bit of logic. And normally people can work out then, okay, well if we've got a decision, what are we deciding? Well, if it's over or under a certain temperature. So in this example I've got, is the temp over 25 degrees? And then if it is yes, it's going to say warm, and if it's not, it's going to say cold. And then we come to an end there. So this is quite a nice way to get it introduced to pupils. It also gets flowchart design in, so they can start thinking like a computer. They can think of logical reasoning. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on input, and I'm going to say on button A. The reason I'm putting it on button A is because I only want the temperature to be displayed when button A is pressed. Now we're going to go to basic, and I'm going to go to show number. So if I drag a show number block in and then go back to input and then click on temperature, click, hold down, drag and drop, you can see now our program is pretty much well underway. When I click the button A on the microbit, you can see now it says 21, and this little gauge here allows you to change the temperature just to change then the display that's on the microbit. Now what you'll notice there is, look, I've clicked on show number. What happens if I put a show string in? Well, let me take the show number out for a moment and put a show string in, and when I try to use now a temperature, if I click, hold down, drag and drop, it won't actually let me put this in. And the reason it won't let me put it in is because the temperature needs to be displayed as a number. So therefore we have to use this logic block here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use a little bit of logic to make our decision. So in the logic option here, I have an if then, and I've got an if then else. So I'm going to click, hold down with my mouse, drag and drop. Now we're going to change this slightly. I'm going to go back into my logic, because what I need is an operator. So I'm going to need one of these. So I'm going to click, hold down, drag and then drop that in. Now what we need to do is we need to do a test. So we need to say if the temperature is greater than 25. So the way we do that is quite easy. I go back to my input, and then I go down to temperature, and then I put it in there. I change this operator from less than to greater than, and I'm gonna put in there 25. So far we've got if the temperature is over 25, then I'm going to go up to basic, click on show string, and then I need to say warm. Now it's only got one condition in here, so if it's over 25 it's going to say warm. Well, if it's not over 25 then it must be cold. So I'm going to put the basic again, and I'm going to go to show string, put this in, and I'm going to say cold. Now to test our microbit out, if I click on the A button here, you can see it says 21, and then that's followed by cold. And again, if I up the temperature a little bit, say 37, and then press the A button again, it says 37, and then straight away it'll say warm. So this is one way of doing a temperature with a microbit. Now there is another way, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the other way now as a variable. So I'm going to put input on button A, so we're going to change this at the moment to button B, and what we're going to do is I'm going to go to variables, and I'm going to set a variable. Now I'm not going to make a variable yet. I tell you what, yeah, we will. So I'm going to say make variable, and then I'm going to call it temp, and then click OK. So what I've done now is I've made a variable which is up here, and I've basically put it now into my variables pot. So I'm going to click on set item to 0 and just put this in for a moment. Now this is a default block, and I can change this part here where it's got item. I need my variable. So my variable now is temp. So I'm going to say set temp to, well, I'm going to go up to input, and I'm going to go to temperature. So what this does is it basically is displaying, setting the temperature variable to whatever the temp is. Now if I were to then click on the top here and go to basic, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say show string. Now I could do show number, but I'm going to do string for now. I'm going to put show string, and then I'm going to go to variable, and I'm going to drag temp in and leave it go here. Now you'll notice straight away it's come up with an error, and the error is that it cannot be assigned. Now that is just showing you here now that you can't use a string for this. So again, let's dump that, go back to basic, go back to number, put it here, and then go to my variables, and then we're going to get temp in again. So far if I click on button B, it's 21, so it's basically setting it there. Now the logic that we've got is going to be very, very similar to the one we have over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this block just to show you. So instead of saying if temp, which are there, I'm going to use my variable. So I'm going to say if the temp is over 25. Now when I press the button B, you can see it's 21, and then it's going to say cold, and if I up the temperature to 36 again, let's see, 36, and then it's saying warm. So these two are doing exactly the same. The only difference you've got is we're using a variable here. Now in an extreme case, with the first solution you could test the temperature, and then by the time it's on to this if statement, the temperature potentially could have changed. Whereas here we're setting the variable at the start of the code, so the variable temp will hold whatever the temperature is, and then that's basically just called throughout. So this is a slightly better way of doing it. The second method is ever so slightly better.